Hi, I'm Nissa from Wild Earth Travel. Svalbard is a magical realm where polar bears roam and an enchanting mix of rugged glaciers, pristine landscape, and adventure beckon. It's practically inaccessible except by the nimbleness of small ship, which makes it one of the last remaining true wildernesses on Earth. Here at Wild Earth, we are experts in sending adventurers to this icy wonderland, and later this year you have the chance to discover Svalbard under the guidance of world-renowned wildlife photographer Doug Allan, who has worked decades in the industry, including work on many BBC wildlife productions, and someone that Sir David Attenborough refers wildlife cameramen don't come much more special. Our partners in the Arctic, Polar Quest, take us through this journey with Doug and what you might expect to experience on this adventure.
So, welcome everyone to this Svalbard webinar with Doug Allan as guest speaker. My name is Nicholas and I'm a polar specialist and guide and photographer. This evening, you will get the chance to learn more about Svalbard and small ship expedition cruising. For those who haven't been in Svalbard and not know where it is, it's located very far north, located in the heart of the Arctic. The northern part of the archipelago are actually on the 80th degrees north. So it's very far north. It's actually closer to the North Pole than the Norwegian mainland. You can see also here on the map, you have Greenland to the west and the Russian Arctic to the east. The size of the archipelago is approximately 61,000 square kilometers, and that's a similar size as Ireland. And the archipelago is divided in 5 bigger islands. The main island is called Spitsbergen, and a lot of people say that they thought that Spitsbergen is the whole archipelago, but that's actually only the main island, which is called Spitsbergen. The archipelago is called Svalbard, the Norwegian word. And it's actually a Norwegian word for cold coast. Our starting point for the expeditions is Longyearbyen, which is located in the ice fjord, the largest fjord on Svalbard, on the west coast. This very small settlement is the major community on Svalbard, and it has around 2,500 inhabitants. It's a former coal mining settlement, and it actually named after an American entrepreneur called John Monroe Longyear, which started a coal mine here in 1906. And it was by then called Longyear City. A few years later, it was bought by the Norwegian government, and they gave the small settlement a more Norwegian word, therefore Longyearbyen. But Longyearbyen is only a starting point for our adventures. After a comfortable hotel night in Longyearbyen, we embark the ship and leave the settlement behind and aim for the wilderness far from any civilization. And Svalbard offers wilderness, true Arctic wilderness. Over 60% of all landmass on Svalbard is covered in ice, either big ice caps or glaciers. There are over hundreds of glaciers on Svalbard. So it's a lot of ice and dramatic landscape with ice. And something which is quite interesting with Svalbard also, that you have this big variation in landscape. You have peaky mountains in the west. You have a harsh polar desert in the east. You have so much variation in the landscape itself. And also, in addition to that, there have been no large-scale hunting in modern times. So there are really good opportunities to see wildlife such as polar bears and seals. For the ship expedition, we use the ship MS Quest, which is perfect designed for polar expeditions. She's take up to 50 passengers in 24 outside cabins. She has a panorama lounge on the upper deck. She have a restaurant for all travelers seated in same time. She has a bar and a small library, and 5 guides and 5 zodiacs. Here also you can see some interior pictures of Quest as well. She has 6 cabin categories divided in triples, twins, and double beds. All cabins have private facilities with toilet and shower. And also have the lounge you see here in the picture as well, and the restaurant on the lower deck. It's a really, really nice, comfortable ship in a small size. And here we can see also some exterior pictures as well. You see you have a wonderful spacious deck around the whole ship. So plenty of deck space to enjoy the views and scout for wilderness, for wildlife. You also have, you can see on the lower right picture also the gangway, which also make it so efficient and quick and easy to enter and disembark the zodiacs. So this zodiac operation is so easy and comfortable and efficient with Quest, and that's also something which make her very, very good and efficient for expedition cruising. Because of course it's nice to be on board the ship, but we also want to be out in the zodiacs. We do want to do outings and excursions several times during a day. I think that's also something I think is so good with Quest, that it has it all. It has the comfort from a large ship, but still it's so small, and it's have the advantage of a small group experience, and you can have this flexible itinerary, and it's quite unique size that we have with Quest. You have, as you said, the comfort of a big ship, but you still have small ship and small group experience. And what's a difference between a small ship experience between a big passenger ship? And that is that with a small ship, we can offer a more exclusive nature experience. We can reach the most inaccessible places on the on Svalbard. There are also we can have a more flexible itinerary, so every trip will be unique. We look at the ice chart, we look at the weather, and we look for wildlife, and we actually planning a route after that for every trip. There is few travelers per guide. On board Quest, we have 5 guides for maximum 50 passengers. All travelers can disembark at the same time. We can have outings for everyone. Minimal waiting time to walk into the zodiacs. We can maximize the time in the wilderness, and the traveling with a true expedition spirit. And with a bigger ship, we not can go to the smallest fjord on Svalbard. There'll be waiting time for going into Zodiac for Zodiac operation. It's often a very fixed route, and you're also not allowed to have a space on board to have like a lecture for everyone or have meals for everyone. So you will have like divided in several groups on board, and we will not have the same informal atmosphere on board. And me as a guide and a photographer, and who have been on Svalbard many, many times, I really see the difference, and I know that it's a big different to be on a small ship compared with a big one. It's really for a traveler's point of view, it's a big difference. But also actually for Svalbard itself, to be on a smaller ship with a smaller group will also get a smaller footprint on the places we visit and less disturbance to the wildlife. So it's actually both better for for both the environment but also for the traveler as well. And Svalbard is really best done in small scale, to be out there in a small group. And for excursions, which we do daily with our Zodiacs, they are actually stable boats, superb platforms for exploring the wilderness on Svalbard. And we often go cruising in front of glaciers. We look at icebergs. We encounter wildlife. We do that safely with those Zodiacs. And there's also perfect to escorting us to shore for hikings and go on shore and maybe go to historical places, etc. There are a lot of things to see on land as well on Svalbard. And again, to be only 5 Zodiacs in the water is a big difference compared to maybe be double, or even sometimes you have big expedition ships which might have 20 Zodiacs in the water in the same time, and we only have 5. That's a big difference for both the travelers, but also for the wildlife as well. And Svalbard has so much beautiful nature and stunning nature to look at, both in details and also on a big scale. The voyage starting in early May and end in September, and it's a big difference in Svalbard in May and September. The big difference is actually the ice and the snow. When we're coming to Svalbard in early season, it's completely covered in beautiful snow landscape, and it's ice in every fjord, both pack ice and fjord ice. And that's a beautiful, stunning scenery. But it's also needs also planning the route after the season. So in early season, in May and also into June, we have a shorter program, which is only 7 nights on board the ship. And during the summer, the ice starting to disappear from the archipelago, and we actually have access to go further north and further east as well. So you can see here on the picture, you have some dots in yellow and some dots in blue. The yellow one is in early season, May and June, and the blue ones are our longer trips. The longer trips are 10 nights on board, and they starting in July. So in July, August, and also in September, we have the possibility to actually explore more places in the archipelago because of the possibility that the less pack ice have given us. So depending on if you go on a trip in May or later in the season, you will be a big difference in especially the ice and the landscape, but also in how the itinerary and the route we have. On board the ship, we have professional polar guides who will make everything to make the trip as good as possible for you. All our guides are equipped with rifle for bear safety on land, but they're not only there for safety and scouting wildlife. They will also provide you with knowledge, so you will have a better impression and strengthens your understanding for Svalbard. It can be about lectures about nature, lecture of geology, or actually, like you see here, historical lecture about the reach to the North Pole, by Amundsen, Ellsworth, and Nobile. So they always steer and they give small talks on board lectures on board the ship, small talks in zodiacs and on land. So every time they are there for you so you can have a good and wonderful experience of Svalbard. And then we also have special lectures on some trips as well. And it's an honor to present Doug Allan, which will be on board one of our departures in July on board Quest, a special lecture on board. So it's an honor to leave over to Doug Allan, who will talk more about Quest in July and what you can expect to see on a Svalbard expedition. See if we can hear you, Doug.
Unmute. There we are.
No, good.
Good. Thank you, Nicholas. Yes, welcome to all of you listening and watching on the webinars. Yes, it's going to be I'm looking forward to my trip on to Svalbard, which is basically the 1st until the 9th. The 9th until the 20th of July, something like that. Anyway, why I've been many times to Svalbard filming, and what's great about this particular trip that I will be going on is that we're going to visit the classic habitats, the classic environments in Svalbard. For example, Nicholas, we can see we're going to go into the top of some of the most beautiful bays in the world with a glacier at the top and then these wonderful mountains inland. This one here is up in one of the fjords. The next picture shows the wonderful Kongsfjord, which is where we will be visiting. Early on, you have this beautiful conical peak sitting at the top of the valley, top of the fjords. There are actually 3 mountains like this. They're called the Three Kings, and we're hoping to go in there early on in the voyage. So we're going to spend lots of time amongst the ice, which is where it's exciting. But with the Zodiacs, we've got the ability to explore along the coastline and also to go on shore. That's the big difference with an expedition ship. An expedition ship, it's a real expedition. We don't need piers to go alongside. We don't need mooring spaces. We can get into these Zodiacs and we can go ashore. And then when we are ashore, we can explore. We can go into the hills, and like in this next picture, we can climb up onto the outcrops. We can get a fantastic view out, back across the ice. But also, when we explore on land in the summer, yes, we do have to be aware of polar bears, but we can also maybe see where we're going to go the next big habitat, because around when we go north on our voyage, we will go out into the pack ice, into the moving, shifting ice of the Arctic Ocean. And this next picture, well, that picture there, you can see it, this wonderful mosaic of ice floes which are moving and jostling around. But on those ice floes, we'll see things like perhaps walrus, for example. We'll see seals. It might be where we see polar bears walking around. Now, walrus are some of my favorite animals. I had a very close encounter with a walrus up in Canada when I was filming. I was snorkeling in the water, and basically a walrus came up from underneath and grabbed me round the legs. It thought I was a seal. I'll tell you all about that when you come on the trip. But walrus are definitely, they're exciting animals. And when we see them in the water, we always, are very careful not to go too close to them. But the thing with the Quest, as Nicholas has said, the Quest has this wonderful advantage of we can get on and off those Zodiacs really easily. That ramp which goes down from almost ground level into the boats, it's really, we can get people off the boats quickly, safely, easily, and then we can take them ashore. And sometimes, well, when you get ashore, who knows what you might meet. Arctic foxes, you get many of them around on the shore and things. Well, I've got an Arctic fox on mine, sorry. Next picture is the walrus, because I was going to say there are 1 or 2 places where the ship can hang safely off the shore, a nice sensible distance. We go ashore in the Zodiacs, and then we can move around behind the walrus colonies and look out across the walrus colonies onto the quest in the background. And that, when we are photographing, we're making films, we're always looking for what we call the two shot, which is to put two interesting things in the same frame. So the idea, the chance of maybe getting the quest in the background with the walrus in the foreground makes for a really special photograph. And we use that ability to get ashore also to go to other places. This is another one of these classic places in Svalbard. This is, I have to always remember the name of this one. This is Alkafjella, which is one of the biggest, most accessible bird cliffs on Svalbard, one of the most spectacular, because these bird cliffs, 60, 70 meters high, they just drop sheer right down to sea level. Where you see the Zodiac in that picture, the water underneath that Zodiac is 60 or 70 meters deep. But the cliffs are dotted with all kinds of birds. You can see Arctic murres, which are murres, we call them guillemots in UK, but you've got murres up there. You've got the next one has the little auks. You will find them in amongst the nooks and crannies on the cliffs. And sometimes these birds will take off and they just whir around, because there are other birds which are predators. Gulls, for example, will fly over, and the birds all then take off the cliffs, and they they hassle the gulls because they know that the gulls will maybe attack the chicks or take the eggs, for example. So there's always lots of activity around that gull. There's a thick-billed murre that we're seeing. That's an Arctic murre. We'll see lots of those when we're up in the Arctic. And they will literally, if we sit in the Zodiac, they will come down and they'll paddle around within, just meters of the boat. It's wonderful. And then, of course, but what's great about those bird cliffs is that you can just slowly move along them, and you can hear the birds calling to each other. You can take photographs of the different animals. It really is. I mean, I've traveled across the Arctic, through Arctic Canada and other places, and those bird cliffs, Alkafjella on Svalbard, are definitely one of the best locations anywhere in the world. I've been on them in beautiful sunshine. I've also been on them when the mist has come down and the mist is hanging around the top of the cliffs, and it makes them wonderfully atmospheric and spooky almost. And of course, if you look around sometimes on the beach, which there is either end of the bird cliffs, you might see gulls. This is a gull with its chick on the left-hand side. They're just scavenging on perhaps it looks like some other dead bird anyway. This is the other, there's no doubt nature is there all around you in Svalbard. And the beautiful thing is that you really don't know every time you go ashore, every time you go in the Zodiac, every time you stand on board the ship looking out over the pack ice, you really don't know what you're going to see. Arctic foxes, brown obviously in the summer, white in the winter, but they can be quite confident. I've seen an Arctic fox and it has come up to within 10 meters of me. Quite happily, you sit there and you watch it. And they often hang around the bird cliffs at Alkafjella because, they again are scavenging on eggs perhaps which have dropped off, or young chicks which have failed to fledge and fallen off the cliffs, etc. So there's lots of things to see when we go ashore. The other thing that we might see when we go ashore, we might see caribou, for example. These are Peary caribou, which are quite small. They're unique to Svalbard. They're really not too bothered if we approach them slowly. They're quite accustomed to people in a way. They basically don't have any predators on land. Polar bears do go on land in the summer, but the caribou are way too fast to be caught by a polar bear. So we should see them grazing, and sometimes we can look across, we can see the big males with their antlers and things. We can also see the younger ones. So it's a reminder that Svalbard has lots of animals to see on the land as well as in the sea. And sometimes we'll find areas which are carpeted with these lovely purple thrift flowers. And if you get the chance, like this photographer has, this isn't one of my pictures, but if you get that chance to get the caribou on that lovely carpet of purple flowers, it really adds to it, and you get that lovely silhouette of the animal in the background. And as I say, the flowers they're not particularly well, I was going to say not particularly spectacular, but they are spectacular. And what I should say is that obviously I'm a photographer. It's my pleasure, it will be my pleasure on the trip to help anyone with the photography, no matter whether they're simply are there with a camera phone or an 800mm lens. I'm happy to help anyone get the best sort of picture they can. And this one here, for example, that's a classic iPhone picture. You put your wide angle on your lens, on your iPhone setting, get down beside the animals, throw something nice into the background, give it some depth, then that's the kind of picture that that we can all hope to get in Svalbard. This one, I think the next one might be another one I also took. Yeah, those are Arctic poppies, which I took on Svalbard as well. Again, this one wasn't an iPhone, but could have been an iPhone. You just get wide angle, get down beside your subjects, throw something out of focus in the background to bring the whole thing together. And it just, photographs are everywhere on Svalbard. And I'll be doing a photographic workshop early on. But as I say, I'm very happy to talk to anyone, anytime. If you bring me photographs that you've taken, we can discuss how you might improve them. If you're having any technical issues with the settings on your camera, you want to come off the automatic settings onto understanding how you can have things in the foreground and focus like this and just keep your background just out of focus. We can go into all that at these, when we're having these photographic workshops, but also on a one-to-one. Basically, I will be moving around, mixing around, going with different zodiacs ashore, all sorts of things like that. So everybody will have as much time as they want to spend with me, or as little time as you want to spend with me. You might find that you just want to go away and do your own thing. Who knows? Anyway, what was the next one? Yeah. There are lots of things. As Nicholas said, there's a lot of history on Svalbard. There has been no polar bear hunting since 1968. But prior to that, Svalbard was one of the main places where hunters went to get polar bears. And the polar bears, if you look in this picture here, you'll see a sort of, at the bottom of this mountain, there's a small cabin that we can go and visit. And that cabin is a trapper's cabin. So I think the next picture shows a group of us. Yeah, now that's a cabin where trappers used to live there all year round in order to hunt the polar bears and to hunt other things, Arctic foxes. Obviously, if you want a white coat of an Arctic fox, you have to hunt that in the winter. And the trappers used to live in these small cabins, be self-sufficient for the whole year until, and then they would take their whatever furs they had, they would take them back to the Longyearbyen and do the trading. So if we're lucky, we'll get to visit some of those old cabins, and the guides will tell us about maybe who lived there, but certainly how it was built, how the trappers used to live. And that's one of the great things about Svalbard, is this, not just the natural history, but the human history of the place makes it really unique in the Arctic. Nowhere else has coal, for example, been the main export for many years. I don't think anywhere else in the Arctic has exported coal like that. So, as I say, every day there'll be something to do. Every day there'll be something, new information that we can talk about. And that for me, coming and learning from the expert guides that we have about these other aspects of Svalbard, that's one of the most exciting and rewarding elements, for me in the whole trip. But we also make time, next picture, I think, please. We also make time for collecting rubbish. Sadly, there is a lot of fishing goes on around Svalbard, and sitting where it is in the Arctic, litter from either the fishing industry or even from the industrialized Europe or North America, litter gets washed across the Arctic and can end up, washed across the Atlantic and can end up on the shores of Svalbard. So wherever we see it, we make every attempt to bring it back on the ship. So this particular year, we found a big significant bit of old netting washed up on the shore. So we spent time digging it out. We had a bucket ashore, and we put all the rubbish on the beach into that bucket, and we took it back to the ship where we know we can take it to Longyearbyen and it will get disposed of properly. Because fishing nets, for example, is a big problem with seals. Fishing nets in the water can get tangled, seals can get entangled in them, stuff like that. And this stuff, that modern fishing nets, not like 100 years ago where everything was biodegradable. Newly made fishing nets just last forever. So wherever we can around the island, if we see significant bits of rubbish, we'll, dig it up and bring it back to the ship. And this whole business of Zodiac cruising it's really subtle and it's really exciting, because you go away and the mist might be hanging down. It might be like this, just hanging on the mountains. But as it clears, you just get the most wonderful scenery revealed to you. And one of the big things is going through the pack ice. I mean, as I say, every time we go out, it'll be different. This sort of morning, I remember this one distinctly. The mist was hanging down over the mountains, and then we set sail. It was just beautifully flat, calm. But as the day went on, the mist slowly cleared. And when you go into these fjords, as I say, you don't know what you're going to see. In this case, we were extremely lucky. We found some whales up at the top end of the fjord. And this one is a fin whale, which is probably the second biggest whale that you can find. The fins and the says are second in size to the blue whales. But again, we've got experts, of which I might be one of them, I suppose, when it comes to whales. You can recognize whales from the shape of that dorsal fin. Depending on where they blow, you can tell from the shape of the blow as they exhale. Those are characteristic different for each whale. But I will stick my neck out and say we will certainly see whales, but what kind we'll see, I'm not sure. This one here is a fin whale. I think the next picture is the biggest whale of them all. That's a blue whale. And you can tell it's a blue whale when you see it, because you see it blow and then you see back. And the back just rolls on forever. Then you have a tiny little fin that comes up, and then a big, thick, if it lifts its tail like that, the caudal peduncle, as it's called, that area of the whale's body next to the tail fluke, that is really massive in a blue whale. So with a bit of luck, we'll see blue whales. Yes, that would be a bit of luck. But the commonest whale that we're most likely to see is probably either a minke whale, which is small, or this one, which is a humpback whale. Humpback whales and minkies are fairly common around Svalbard. And again, you can recognize the humpback whale. You can see how much thinner that caudal peduncle is. And they often have this frayed trailing edge on their caudal fin, on their tail flipper. But whales are wonderful to see. And if you haven't seen a whale before, then to see one in Arctic scenery is extra special, no doubt about that. And what else is there? Yeah, as I say, the same pictures that you saw earlier of the mist hanging down on the mountains, this was later that day when the mist had lifted, the beautiful mackerel sky, as they call it, lovely clouds up there, still flat, calm, and we were able to go out with the Zodiacs and go much, much closer. That glacier in the distance there is actually not too far away. The wide angle makes it look further away, but you've got this lovely light on the mountains, this lovely soft light, just the right angle on those mountains. And as we cruise around, there's a few pictures here, I think, of Zodiacs. Yeah. As we cruise around, I mean, ice is not blue. Well, it is blue. It's actually every shade of blue and green that you can imagine. And this here is what you'd call a bergy bit, funnily enough. This is a small piece. This iceberg has fallen off a glacier originally, and you can tell it's very hard, that sort of colour, and the way it has weathered shows that it's a piece of glacier ice. And you'd call that a bergy bit. It's not that big. If we had a Zodiac alongside that, people standing in the Zodiac would be about as high as that prong that's pointing out. And the literal name for these is, the proper name is, they are called bergy bits. They're not big enough to be an iceberg. They're too big to be simple brash ice, which is small stuff. This is a classic bergy bit. So hopefully we'll see, lots of those. And again, the colour that you see in them really depends on what kind of day it is. If it's blue skies, sunshine, then it gets like that. If it's darker, overcast, then you see different colours in it. Then the next picture, I think we'll have, yeah, there you are. You see ice, but under a different colour. That again is very hard, probably glacier ice too, but it looks very different from sea ice. You know, some pieces of ice we see floating around will be the remains of sea ice which has frozen over the winter and has now melted into ice floes. Whereas that sort of stuff is more like a piece of glacier ice, which is now melted down. And that certainly looks like an iceberg which has come off a glacier in the background there. But anyway, my point is that we'll see lots of icebergs. I mean, there's another one. This is much bigger. That's not a bergy bit, but that's come off of a glacier and has now been eroded into these wonderful shapes. And to sail around those, to motor around those in the zodiac and watch how the colours change depending on how the light is falling against them. It's just a lovely experience, and I never tire of it. And the zodiacs are so stable that even if it's lumpy and you're getting rolled around a bit, you're completely safe. But there's no doubt as well that we will meet some lovely calm days, and I would urge everyone to get out on the bergs. On the zodiacs rather. And as I say, when we get closer, we can then cruise along the front of the ice cliff, along the front of the glacier. You get the wonderful face of the glacier looking backwards into the mountains in the distance. And then I think the next shot has us closer again. Yeah, we can move in a little bit closer, use a telephoto lens to squeeze up those ice pinnacles, the pinnacles of ice in the foreground with the pinnacles of rock in the background. And then finally, what's really nice is that we obviously spend a bit of time maneuvering the zodiacs. Each zodiac driver will talk to his partner on radio and will say, can you move in a bit, get between us and the glacier so we can get the important shots that put people into the picture, give us some, let us relate to each other. And really, I would encourage all of you when you're there, get pictures of the scenery by all means, but try to get pictures of the zodiacs, the boat, other passengers in the shot, because they're the ones that will bring your trip alive, especially when you go back and start showing other people about it. But as you move along the glacier front, I think the next picture, as you move along the glacier front, there are caves in the glacier, and from those caves, fresh water will sometimes come pouring out from melt channels in the glacier. They erode those caves, and then that makes the water at the front of those caves is slightly less saline than the seawater. So you get a bit of what's called an upwelling. You get an extra area of special productivity in the water, and you'll often find there are lots of gulls, terns, herring gulls and other things bouncing up and down in that little upwelling area where there's a bit more plankton than normally. So we're always on the lookout for things like that, and we could take pictures of that. And then the next shot, I'm not sure what I've got in my next picture. Yeah, as I say, being out in the pack ice, get outside and watch all you can, because we'll move past lovely pieces of iceberg like this. We may see all kinds of things, meteorological phenomena, for example. I think the next one, we've still got the fog bow in it. Yeah, that's a fog bow, which is exactly the same as a rainbow, only it's formed in fog. And in fog, the water particles are so small that they're split into the spectral colours, but then they combine together again, so they're just all mixed together and become white. So out there on the pack ice, where you often get mist hanging over the pack ice, mist formed because some areas the pack ice might open up, and that area becomes a little bit warmer above the open sea than it does above the cold ice. So you get these patches of mist forming, and if the sun's off the right side, maybe you get these fog bows forming, which are commoner in the Arctic than you'll see elsewhere. And again, when we go out, we'll see some birds that are unique to the pack ice, which you don't get anywhere else. This is the lovely Arctic gull, which is pure white. Not very common, but if you keep your eyes open and got the binoculars, then we will see some ivory gulls when we're up there. And we should see black guillemots, which is the next picture. They're called black guillemots, but actually they've got red feet, and if it opens its beak, it's got a bright red inside to its beak, and it's got little white flashes on its wings. But they're lovely. They make this lovely high-pitched whistling, cheeping noise when they come through. So we'll see all those when they're out. We'll see those when they're out on the pack ice, and we may see some of them on land. The thing is that, we have a rule when we're filming. We say, if you're not there, you'll never see it, which basically means keep your eyes out, keep pinned. But obviously, when we do see something special, we also will get everybody on the PA system so that people will know that we're seeing something special. When we're out in the pack ice, we'll see the two classic seals. We'll see some ringed seals and we'll see some bearded seals, which are the two classic Arctic seals. We'll see them up lying on top of the ice. And they'll probably be asleep. They might slip into the water. Ring seals are particularly wary, particularly if any polar bears around. But you'll see them lying on the ice floes, and then they'll lift their head and go back to sleep again. Sometimes, if we're lucky, the ice floe may bring the bearded seal, closer to us, and you can see there why it's called a bearded seal. It's got these wonderful long whiskers. And this seal, it often feeds on the bottom, on muddy bottoms. And the idea is that it uses these whiskers almost as sensory organs, where it can swim along the surface of the mud, and it can feed on clams and things, which it detects in the mud with its whiskers. But of course, the big thing that we all want to see out on the pack ice will be the polar bears. And they could be anywhere. Polar bears will live on ice as long as they possibly can. So that's why we go into the ice. We're hoping that we'll go there and we'll see some of these polar bears. And they could be doing anything. If we were very lucky, we might see one with its cubs. These cubs will have been born in January. Well, they've been, January or so. So these cubs here will be about 6 or 7 months old. The female can have 1 or 2 cubs. And those cubs will stay with the mum for 2.5 years. So these cubs are 6 months old. They've got another 2 years with that mother, who will teach them all that she knows, about the hunting. So we may see polar bears on the ice, but it might be, to be honest, that our best chance of seeing them at this time of year on the July trip is actually on shore. Because while polar bears will stay on ice as long as they can, when there isn't enough hunting on the ice or when the ice melts too much, they will come ashore. And as we go along the shore, as we pass up the shore from the quest, you can bet your bottom dollar that people will be looking with binoculars to see if they can pick out the polar bears on the shore. And it may be that if there's no danger to us, no disturbance to the bear, we may be able to launch the boats and go in closer into the shore and just be able to watch from the safety of the Zodiac. We'll be able to film the bear. Sometimes we might one bear, sometimes there might be a couple of bears that we'll see. But I'm certainly hoping that we'll see bears on the shore. Sometimes they're on the grassy, sometimes they're on the stony beaches. Other times they might be on the grassy slopes, again, underneath some bird cliffs, looking for, scavenging for things. But the key thing with all the bears is, patience. And in fact, with all the animals that you see, animals naturally spend a lot of time doing nothing. And if we want to see behavior from them, or want to watch them doing their thing in real time, then we need to be patient too. We need to hang back, not disturb them. And the last picture, I always think that if you can leave a bear in that sort of position, nice and relaxed, one paw almost over the other, just happily looking at you while you make your way back to the ship, then you have left a happy bear. And that's what I think, that's what I hope we all have in Svalbard. We'll go there and we'll become part of nature when we're on the ship. And the quest lets us do that. It lets us be as close to nature as you possibly can be and to experience the great different habitats that exist in Svalbard at that time of year, on shore, in the fjords and out and amongst the pack ice. And it's going to be a super trip. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doug.
My pleasure.
Lovely presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you ever encounter narwhals during the most northern parts of the cruise?
I think narwhals are pretty rare. We may see belugas, which of course are closely related to narwhals. I myself have only seen narwhals once off Svalbard, and that was in July, but it was quite a long way north. But again, it's just, you really don't know. they are visitors. I know they do visit Svalbard. So it's just a matter of keeping an eye out and being ready to get up. Because remember, we'll have 24-hour daylight. So you have to be prepared to, if you really want to see a narwhal and you're in bed at 2:30 in the morning, then I will come and wake you up if I see one. So be prepared to have a disturbed night. One of my, well, I'll be giving talks during the voyage about the filming that I have done in the Arctic. And so I'll be taking you behind the scenes as to how some of the better known sequences, perhaps in Frozen Planet, Blue Planet, I'll be telling you how we got those shots. So there'll be plenty other good photographs in those presentations.
Yes, most of our guides, they bring a camera and they actually take a lot of photos during the expedition, and they merge it together to a slideshow that they will present on the last day of the expedition, and afterwards they will send out to all the passengers and travelers. I know I have a statistic with me from some years, and I can say that mainly the bigger baleen whales, and that's, I mean, it's the blue, the fin, the humpback, and also actually the small minke as well. They're usually seen starting in the start of the summer, and so June, July, and August are the best period to see them, I would say. Belugas are seen actually the whole season when we are in the fjords. They are also often in the deepest fjords we see belugas. And narwhals, that's a tricky one. As Doug said, he has seen it once, and I think for the last years I haven't heard about none of the expeditions seen in Norway, so it's very rare on Svalbard.
Yeah, the reason what happens in the poles is that in the winter, obviously it's dark, so there's very little plankton, very little for baleen whales to feed on. But as the ice breaks up and the 24-hour daylight comes back, then suddenly you get what's called a plankton bloom, which means all the small plants and animals in the ocean really begin to rev up. And that plankton bloom is usually at its peak in the second half of July into August. And that's when the baleen whales, these whales which feed by swimming through the water slowly and filtering all these small food particles onto their plates of baleen, that's the best time for them to come to feed on the plankton bloom. Whereas the belugas, they are toothed whales. They're basically kind of dolphin. They have teeth. So they feed on fish, and they can come and feed on the fish much earlier in the season. Basically, they come as soon as the ice begins to break up, the belugas will come up and they will exploit the fish stocks underneath the ice. So the belugas arrive first, and then the baleen whales tend to come later in the summer.
Yeah, I would say that's depending of the snow situation, how much snow it is. Is it a lot of snow in May, which can be tricky to doing longer hikings on shore. But if it's good conditions, we try to go on shore every day and doing some smaller hikings. So often a mix between maybe one zodiac cruise and one hiking each day, or going shore. And then, of course, sometimes can be a long hiking, sometimes it's shorter hiking. You never know, depending on which area we are and what we're doing. we will have Dog this summer in July. So if you're interested to going on a trip with its 10 nights aboard the ship and the possibility to explore most part of the archipelago, especially the east part, then I would recommend this voyage. But we also have, if you don't have a possibility to going in July, there is also, we will have Dog back again. We're really glad for that. And it will be in May departure. So it will be a completely different Svalbard in May. As I said in my presentation, May, you have this winter wonderland. You have plenty of beautiful snow-covered landscapes and ice, both pack ice and fjord ice. So if you're keen on seeing those winter wonderland sceneries, then I recommend the May departures. And there's also a good time to see seals and walrus on ice as well, because it's a lot of ice in Svalbard in May.
Yep. Yeah, Svalbard does feel different in May from 2 months later. It's not quite another country, let's say, but has a very different feel to it later on. And I'm looking forward to exploring the ice, because I think in the May trip there may be a higher chance of seeing polar bears on the ice, because there will be more ice, so the polar bears will be staying on it. But who knows? One of the exciting things about Svalbard is its unpredictability. We can predict the scenery is going to be there, the glaciers are there, the bird seals, etc. But there are many things which are opportunistic, and every time I go there, I see something that I haven't seen before, or maybe the same thing but in better light, or doing something more exciting, something like that. So that's why I like going back to Svalbard as often as I do.